If you're looking for cheap tickets to go to the basketball game, I got you covered. It's just JP partner with SeatGeek to give you the best ticket purchasing experience. Download the SeatGeek app and you'll unlock so many opportunities to go to an event you will certainly enjoy, like a basketball game. What's awesome about SeatGeek is that it gives you the best price from a lot of sellers, and it separates the good from the bad, and also shows you the viewpoint of your seat on your next outing. Yes, use that for, hold on, there's more. Use the promo code It'sJustJP to get $20 off your purchase. Your deal just got even more awesome. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app for your next event experience.
Is this the dagger?
What up, JP Nation? It's your boy JP. Today we are reacting to ESPN Analyst gets the story for disrespecting Larry Bird. Obviously, they're talking about JJ Redick with his comments and everything not too long ago regarding about, you know, Larry Bird wasn't one of the best three-point shooters of all time, something like that. I forgot, but yeah, it's been a hot topic and everything. And you know, before we get into the video, make sure you subscribe to It'sJP for more basketball content. Click the notification bell. You know when our next upload is. On the road to 30K. Make sure you like this video at the end and comment down your thoughts below on this issue and everything regarding JJ Redick disrespecting Larry Bird. Or does he have a point? Does he not have a point? Please let us know in the comments below. I'll give my takeaways and thoughts at the end or while doing the video and stuff. But without further ado, let's go and get into the video.
Larry Bird is highly regarded as one of the 10 best players in NBA history.
Facts.
He was highly skilled, a great scorer, as well as a great passer.
Yep.
When it came to his Celtics teams, he was highly valuable to their overall success.
Yep.
Now, with that being said, Larry Bird, like most older legends, is losing respect as time goes on. Now, when it comes to ESPN, I was absolutely floored to see a former NBA player insulting Larry Bird and saying point blank he is not one of the greatest shooters in NBA history.
And I think the NBA has gotten way past the balance and watching guys give up dunks to shoot threes on fast breaks. That kind of thing. I think that has hurt the game a lot. Now that's me. I am old school, as we all know. JJ, perfect, but you know, Bird shot plenty of threes. And they had Parrish and McHale. Bird shot plenty of threes. The best. Yeah. And Bird is one of the great shooters in the history of the sport. Not even close.
Bird shot threes. He never was a volume shooter.
No, I know that, but he was a great three-point shooter. He was not good. He was great.
So, stopping that clip right there, Redick, at the very end, had the facial expression of someone who was annoyed and disgusted by Larry Legend being called one of the best shooters of all time. And for someone like Redick, it might be hard to understand that players in the past were also great players. But for him, he is so preoccupied with boosting up today's players,
Yeah,
he
JJ went at him
downplays
too.
and disrespects past eras, like Bird, Cousy, as well as Jerry West. Now, getting on to the actual argument, Larry Bird, in his era, there was a three-point line who was introduced his first year. But for middle school, high school, even college, he had no three-point line. That is some very important context a lot of fans either don't know or try to ignore. And one more thing I do want to add, when Bird came into the NBA, he was actually a power forward who played primarily on the block. And despite that, in his first year in the NBA, he shot 40.6% for behind the arc. In terms of percentage, he ranked third in the NBA. He was fifth in total threes and sixth in threes attempted. As a rookie off the bat, Larry Bird was the best three-point shooter in 1980. Now, what makes it even more impressive, out of the qualifiers for three-point shooting, he was the only power forward to make the list, once again proving how much of a unicorn he really was.
He's one of the top 5 three-point shooters of all time. That's how good Bird is. Oh yes,
we're not
three-point shooting contests. He was phenomenal. Bird's a great shooter.
Wait a minute.
JJ
Bird is absolutely one of the greatest shooters ever, but he's not one of the top 5 three-point, top 3, whatever.
Did you see the three-point shooting that he put on, those clinics that he put on at the All-Star game?
Again,
did you watch?
Dog, it's just math. It's attempts, it's makes, and it's percentage. And there's no way you could ever argue Larry Bird is a top 3 three-point shooter of all time. You can't make that argument.
You're basing it on math. You're basing it on math and the time of when he played. I'm basing it on just shooting.
Now, looking at JJ in this clip, he once again provides no context, saying, quote, "It's about makes, attempts, and percentage. Looking at the raw numbers with no context, no data, and no additional information. That argument right there, going on stats alone, is highly disingenuous. For example, look at the mid and early 2000s. Back in that era, averaging 30 points was extremely difficult for people like Kobe, Allen Iverson, and even T-Mac. Being knowledgeable NBA fans, we know that era had a much slower pace, the paint was more crowded, and scoring was definitely more difficult. When looking at the raw stats with no context, players in today's league averaging 30 were more efficient compared to Kobe as well as Iverson. And like Redick said, it's makes, attempts, and percentage. Someone like SGA, off the pure raw stats, was a better scorer than peak Iverson. And someone like Tatum technically was more impressive than the early 2000s Kobe. My overall point being, stats like usual require context. The same thing goes for Larry Bird and his shooting percentage. And speaking of that percentage, looking at Bird, after 1984, when he stopped playing power forward, his overall shooting splits were highly impressive. Shooting 50% from the field, 39.8% from three, and 90% from the line.
He was phenomenal.
During that time period, 5 different times he shot above 40% from three, and his highest season was at 42.7%. And going year by year, in 85, he was 4th in three-point makes, 86, he was 1st, 87, also 1st, and 88, he was 4th. For peak Larry Bird, from 85 to 88, he was 1st in threes made, 1st in threes attempted, and 4th in three-point percentage. For his overall era, in terms of volume and percentage, he was the Steph Curry of the late 1980s.
Bird is an unbelievable.
Again, we had this discussion the other day. We had this discussion the other day about James Naismith. James Naismith invented the game. You were rewarded for putting the ball in the basket. There's plenty of people that have shot more, made more, and guess what? Made more at a higher percentage than Larry Bird from three. I'm not saying Larry Bird is not one of the greatest shooters ever. He's not one of the greatest three-point shooters ever.
Yes,
You cannot make that argument.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Because the 80s was so much different. It's physicality, the way they guarded people. You couldn't be.
Just look at JJ's face.
Seriously,
I've been trying to make a point for you, Doug.
So once again, Redick has zero historical context and wants to make basketball black and white and about percentage and stats. And looking at Larry Bird, like I said before, he was one of the pioneers for the high-volume three-point shooters from day one in the NBA. And for a big man, he was especially unique in his time because most forwards didn't dare step out to shoot threes. And Bird's overall influence, much like Steph Curry, had a big effect on the game going forward for guys like Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Durant, and even Jason Tatum. And one thing I do want to nail home, in 1980, three-point shooting was a gimmick and a joke for most coaches. But for Larry Bird, in a 5-year period, he legitimized it, was shooting upwards of 40%, really not knowing what he was doing for his time. And like I said before, peak Larry Bird was an elite and all-time great three-point shooter. As from 85 to 88, he shot 41.4% from behind the arc, when the league average was 29.5%. Once again showing Bird was light years ahead of the curve and is a unicorn for his time period given his size, volume, as well as percentage. And one more thing I do want to reiterate is stats with zero context. As any average Joe off the street can look at a box score, look at a percentage, and read it and tell if it's good or bad. But a real smart NBA fan, what they do, they look at the context, the peak, and the overall era. As looking at raw stats as a simpleton, someone like Kobe and his career stats aren't as impressive as Damian Lillard when it comes to scoring. As Dame compared to Kobe, averages more points, a higher true shooting percentage, higher three percentage, and higher free throw percentage. Would anyone in their right mind say Dame Lillard was a better overall scorer than Kobe? Because looking at the numbers, remember, makes, attempts, and percentage, Dame Lillard, in fact, was a better scorer. And once again, looking at Bird, at his absolute peak in the playoffs, he was phenomenal. As an 86, he averaged 25.9 points, 9.3 boards, 8.2 assists on 52, 41, and 93 splits. For NBA history, Larry Bird was the first player ever to have a high-volume 50, 40, 90 postseason run. And since Bird, only KD and Kawhi have joined him on that list.
Impressive.
Let's say Steph Curry, for example.
Right.
When I watch Steph Curry off the ball in a playoff game,
Oh, he's great. I
getting
know that.
grabbed and held by Marcus Smart, they're attached to him at all times.
Right.
Then when I watch Larry Bird come off a pin down and no one's within 5 feet of him and they're shooting the gap, you're telling me one is more physical than the other? You're telling me that's more physical than Steph Curry being grabbed and held for 48 minutes?
Now, stopping Redick right there, when talking about any era of basketball, there are always good defensive teams and bad defensive teams.
Yep.
But for Redick, when it comes to Bird's era, he only focuses in on the bad defense. Compared to Steph's era, where he totally ignores the bad defense and the awful teams like Houston, Charlotte, and San Antonio. And as a basketball fan on YouTube, it takes about 5 minutes to find Larry Bird playing against very physical defense who grabs him, holds him, double teams him, and does all types of things to limit his shots and his shooting space. And when speaking of the 80s, when it came to Pistons, they had Dennis Rodman, Joe Dumars. The Lakers had Cooper and Worthy. Philadelphia had Bobby Jones and Caldwell Jones. Players like Allen Robinson, Larry Nance, Sidney Moncrief, Buck Williams. We had great defenders on all-time great defensive teams. And just like Redick, I could cherry pick bad plays here, bad plays there, from any era. At the end of the day, it makes no sense doing that. You have to watch the film, understand the era, and provide context to what you're watching. Yes, back in the day, they played very close and compact to the basket. That's because back then, they didn't know the value of three-point shooting. But someone like Bird was a pioneer and an innovator of three-point shots for big men and just players in general. And one last thing I do want to throw in there, looking at Larry Bird, Mad Dog Russo brought up the NBA Finals. For Bird in the Finals, for his career, in 5 trips collectively, he shot 42.2% from behind the arc. And when it came to clutch time play, in the final 5 minutes, shot a staggering 42.8%. If you look at three-point shooting for Larry Bird, at the biggest times when the stakes were highest, he elevated his game and rose to the occasion. And like Pat Riley said, Larry Legend is the guy you want taking the shot when the clock's winding down. So that right there is my last overall point. And when it comes to Bird, I personally think he's a top 10 shooter of all time. If you want to say top 5, I definitely wouldn't push back too heavily given his era and how good he was for his time period. And for Redick, as you guys know, I am not a big fan of him or his takes regarding past legends. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.
That was the end of the video. Just my takeaways and regarding about the JJ Redick, take about, Larry Bird, not a top 5 3-point shooter of all time, the physicality. Before I get into my takeaways, he did respond back eventually, like a week or 2 later, after hearing, Jay West's comments and Dominique Wilkins' comments regarding his take and everything. First of all, the media can sometimes be really evil because they'll ask like a question to those legends in a way that it's going to get sensitive and it's going to get the legend to react to it and stuff like that. So the media can always throw up any type of question. They don't really go exactly, like if someone makes a comment, they don't give you the overall comment. They give you this one little taste of a statement that's going to make you react to it. If you get interviewed and all that, it's like, what do you think about this? So that it stores up more trouble because that's money in the pocket and something to talk about at the end of the day when you're in the media. So media is kind of evil in terms of that and all that. So definitely check out JJ Redick's response regarding about what he was trying to clarify with the statements and everything. So first things first, in terms of my takeaways, person in that video, Uncut Hoops, I believe, putting up the points about the eras and all that, like Damian Lillard and Kobe Bryant's stats, you know, for 1 year and stuff like that. You see like Damian Lillard's stats green because he did it more higher than Kobe Bryant and all that. When you do like stats and everything, you got to provide like context to it first. Like you say, you got to provide context and why you think this is and all that. You can't really compare eras because the eras are so much different. Like, you know, in terms of the rules back in the day, the rules, you can get away with a lot of stuff back in the day than you do now, where they had to clean up, you know, after like, you know, brawls, and then try to clean up the image to protect the NBA. And, you know, you see a high volume of three-point shooting and all that, revolution of the three-point shooting, and everybody's shooting three-pointers now. And, you know, even big guys shooting three-pointers now. The pace of the game's a lot more faster. They focus 10 more on, you know, offense, you know, in terms of scoring, three-point shot, dunking, have a high offensive scoring game, you know, kind of taking away a little bit of the defense and all that. It's kind of hard to play defense in this era because, you know, you can't really get away with like hand check. You can't get away. You got to move your feet at all times if you want to be a great defender and all that, and can poke, you know, with the clean steal, clean block and all that. So it's kind of hard to play defense in this era because they focus so much on the offense. So you can't really compare eras in terms of that and everything. They didn't really shoot a lot of three-pointers back in the day, in Larry Bird's era, you know, when, you know, with the Reggie Millers, the Steve Kerrs, the Craig Hodges, you know, Chuck Pearson, a lot of, you know, three-point shooters coming into the era, you know, and, you know, they installed the three-point shooting in Larry Bird's rookie year. Yeah, Larry Bird took advantage of the three-point shooting, but they tend to focus more in terms of the paint because you got to have like a, you know, a real good center right there to focus in terms of going in the paint and mid-range and everything. And some people take advantage of the three-point shots and all that. You know, if you hear Reggie Miller saying, you know, if they didn't really have like a three-point shot, you know, who knows what he could have been. You know, Steve Kerr, you know, you hear all these legends. But yeah, Larry Bird, and he, you know, JJ clarified in the statement, he respects Larry Bird. He really respects Larry Bird. You know, he says he's one of the best players of all time, top 10, you know, got him higher than top 10 and all that in terms of best players. You know, he says he's one of the best shooters of all time, you know. Now, sometimes he can kind of get into those stats, but like, yes, it's great to use stats and all that just to go against people with your opinion and all that, but it's your opinion at the end of the day. It's not like, you know, something that everybody's going to agree with at the end of the day, because you're going to have people going to disagree, you're going to have people that's going to agree. Bringing up, you know, Richard Jefferson, you know, I think that was kind of like a bad comparison, you know, I guess he was trying to use that stat as like, well, you know, Richard Jefferson's a better three-point shooter than Larry Bird in terms of percentage and everything, but we never talk about, you know, Richard Jefferson, one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. It's like, you know, you probably bring Steve Kerr versus Larry Bird in, it's like, you know, well, you know, Steve Kerr's the all-time leader in three-point percentage right there, you know, but we never talk about Steve Kerr as one of the top, you know, 5 best shooters of all time. There's always Reggie Miller, there's always Ray Allen, there's always Larry Bird, and so on and so on. You know, we never bring up Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr should be the best three-point shooter of all time because he got the highest three-point percentage of all time, but we don't do that because you got to provide context and everything at the end of the day. So it's opinion based at the end of the day, just like the GOAT debates of like who's the greatest of all time and why. And it's just hard for people. It's just hard for it because people are going to talk about it and all. And then in terms of the physicality and everything, I can see where JJ Redick's coming from in terms of the physicality and all that. You know, it's like, okay, Steph Curry is getting grabbed and holding and stuff, but there's times that Steph Curry is wide open and stuff, and the defender be like flying off, and he's open for a three-point shot. So I mean, there's games where Steph is open, you know, instead of getting grabbed and hold and everything. And yeah, there's times Larry Bird getting grabbed and hold and punched and slapped and all that. And then there's times Larry Bird was open and all that. You know, he brought up a great point. There's good defensive teams and there's bad defensive teams. So I mean, there's not really like a difference, you know, and all that. You get away with the Wolves back in the day because the Wolves were so much different than you do now. So yeah, you just can't compare those. You can't really compare like the Wolves. You can't really compare players from past and present and all that, you know. I just wish there was like a better way that we can like you know, the modern and the old heads can have like respect for each other's game and all that, because you know, you're listening to like a lot of legends, you listen to a lot of modern players and stuff like that, you know, like they ain't gonna like criticize their own era of basketball and all that, so you won't be able to hear that. So yeah, I just think, he kind of, like this video, they kind of do make a point, and I can also see JJ Redick's point. Sometimes I feel like he kind of defends a little bit on the modern players and all that, and that's good that you always have a player, former player will defend the modern era of basketball with modern players and all that, and then you have your past basketball players, defending their era and all that. So it's all opinion based at the end of the day and all that, and whoever you want to side with, that's your opinion. That is totally fine, You ain't gonna change anybody's opinion at the end of the day and all that. But yeah, like Larry Bird's one of the best shooters of all time, one of the best three-point shooters of all time. He brought up the statistics of terms of percentage. He was impressive, very impressive. You're definitely going to get the ball in Larry Bird's hands to get you a bucket or a three-point shot and everything. So, yeah, so that's my opinion, my takeaways. Definitely comment down below and tell me your thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts regarding about JJ Redick's take, if you think he went too far or you kind of see JJ Redick's point. I kind of see his point, and I also can see, like, Mad Dog's point or anybody else's point regarding it. Just like you just have to have contextual information. And like I said, it's your opinion at the end of the day. So please comment down below and let me know your thoughts and all that. Subscribe to SeatGeek for more basketball content. Click the notification bell. You know when our next upload is. On the road to 30K. Make sure you like this video, and y'all have a blessed one. Peace.